Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very happy to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. This is my new boyfriend. He's 10,000 times better than you. Camille smiled as she introduced the man sitting beside her to Laurent. Her voice was just loud enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear. Raoul displayed a smug smile, his fingers resting lightly on Camille's bare wrist. People in the restaurant looked at Laurent with strange expressions. Several acquaintances whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads, others secretly taking photos. 25 years of marriage ending this way in public, and today happened to be their wedding anniversary. Laurent merely nodded politely, showing no shock or anger on his face. He beckoned to a waiting waiter and handed him a white envelope. "Please proceed as I arranged earlier. Thank you," Laurent said calmly. The waiter nodded and left. A flash of confusion crossed Camille's face, but she quickly regained her confident expression. Laurent watched her, his thoughts returning to the day they met 25 years ago. Laurent first met Camille at a small art auction by Lake Geneva. At that time, he was already a somewhat renowned clock restorer, while she was an assistant appraiser at the auction house. She had questions about the authenticity of a 19th-century French enamel clock, and a colleague recommended she consult Laurent. "This Breguet balance wheel doesn't match properly, Laurent. Look at these patterns here, and the wear pattern on this screw." She handed him the magnifying glass, intelligence sparkling in her eyes. Laurent took the magnifying glass, and after careful examination, nodded in agreement. He was attracted by her professional acuity and attention to detail. The Camille of that time not only had insights about art, but also displayed a strong pursuit of authenticity. Although Laurent later realized this enthusiasm may have been mixed with a desire for professional prestige from the beginning. "You're the first person to notice this," Laurent smiled. "This clock was definitely assembled later. Though the parts are all genuine, they're not the original configuration." Their relationship began this way, seemingly built on a shared pursuit of authenticity and precision. In less than a year, they were married, exchanging vows in a small church by Lake Geneva, promising lifelong fidelity to each other. Laurent invested fully in this marriage, not knowing that a part of Camille's core was always occupied by ambition and vanity. Laurent's hearing impairment occurred in the third year of their marriage. He was restoring a rare repeater pocket watch, and while adjusting the movement, the mechanism suddenly malfunctioned. This accident produced a sharp metallic sound that caused permanent damage to his right ear, and his left ear's hearing was also affected. Doctors said he only had about 60% of his hearing left, which would gradually adapt but never fully recover. Camille appeared extremely supportive and considerate at that time, learning basic lip reading and acting as his ears in social settings. "Your eyes and hands are 100 times more sensitive than normal people's," she would often comfort him this way. "A little hearing loss won't affect you becoming the world's best restorer." Indeed, the weakening of his hearing seemed to strengthen Laurent's other senses. He became exceptionally sensitive to visual details, able to detect the slightest color changes or structural differences. This enhanced his reputation in the field of clock restoration, especially in authentication and repairing complex mechanisms. As time passed, Camille's position at the auction house steadily rose. She advanced from assistant appraiser to department head, later to deputy director, and finally became director 5 years ago. She began frequently attending high society events, meeting various wealthy collectors and art dealers. Laurent noticed that what changed in Camille wasn't just her social circle, but also her values. The authenticity and historical significance she once cherished now seemed replaced by market value and social status. She began wearing expensive jewelry and designer clothes, with an increasingly strong pursuit of material enjoyment. "Don't you think we should move to a better area?" Camille suddenly proposed one weekend morning. "Bellevue District has several nice properties. The lake view from there would be more spectacular." Laurent raised his head from the restoration table, removing his magnifying glass. "Is there something wrong with our current home?" "No problem. It's just, my current position requires a more suitable living environment. Board members and important clients occasionally come to visit, and our current residence is somewhat modest." Laurent looked around. This old house inherited from his father was full of history and memories. The spacious workshop occupied the ground floor, natural light pouring through large windows, illuminating his workbench. The second floor was their living space, though not luxurious, but comfortable and cozy. I think it's fine here, Camille. If you want to redecorate the guest reception space, I have no objections. Camille sighed, but didn't continue arguing. Laurent returned to his work, missing the disappointment and dissatisfaction that flashed in her eyes. Raoul entered their lives 3 years ago during a special exhibition. The auction house held an exhibition on lost Swiss watchmaking craftsmanship, and Laurent helped plan it as a technical advisor. On opening day, an art historian claiming to be from the Basel Art Academy, Raoul, specially came to visit Laurent. He showed exceptional interest in a rare pocket watch with a hidden music box that Laurent had restored. "This precision is breathtaking," Raoul praised, deliberately raising his voice to ensure Laurent could hear. He skillfully demonstrated his consideration for Laurent's hearing impairment. "How did you find and restore this hidden mechanism?" Even seasoned restorers would overlook such subtle details. Laurent was initially attracted by the professional knowledge Raoul displayed. He explained in detail his restoration process and the intuition that led him to discover the hidden mechanism. The series of questions Raoul posed not only showed his extraordinary understanding of watchmaking craftsmanship, they also skillfully highlighted Laurent's unique position in the industry, cleverly flattering without seeming obvious. Halfway through the conversation, Camille joined them. Laurent noticed she was especially attentive to her appearance, changed into a more formal suit, touched up her makeup. She even wore perfume she normally wouldn't use in a work setting. She clearly showed interest in this handsome scholar that went beyond professional bounds. She constantly steered the conversation to showcase her own position and knowledge in the art world. Raoul will be staying in Geneva for several months to conduct research, Camille told Laurent when they returned home that evening. Her tone barely concealed her excitement. "I've invited him to participate in our upcoming private collector's preview. He has in-depth knowledge of 17th to 19th century European timepieces and also has an extensive network of collectors. He might bring important client resources to the auction house." Laurent didn't express any objection at the time. In fact, he appreciated the professional knowledge Raoul had demonstrated. He thought the auction house could indeed benefit from such a professional advisor. He completely failed to notice that the sparkle in Camille's eyes had already exceeded normal expectations for a new business partner. In retrospect, Laurent realized that Raoul had been meticulously planning from the beginning. He used professional knowledge as a tool to approach them, first winning Laurent's respect, then capturing Camille's attention. This con man was well-versed in human nature, knowing how to find everyone's weakness. Laurent's was professional pride, while Camille's was the desire for youth and excitement. In the following months, Raoul frequently appeared at the auction house. Laurent occasionally saw him conversing with Camille, always standing very close, their exchanges full of smiles. Sometimes when Laurent approached, they would suddenly stop discussing, behaving exceptionally professionally. Initially, Laurent had no suspicions. He trusted Camille and believed in her professional ethics. Until one day, while restoring an antique clock prepared for auction, he discovered an unusual detail. This was a French-made clock, supposedly belonging to a general from Napoleon's era, rumored to be an officer in charge of intelligence work. While examining its internal mechanism, Laurent discovered a cleverly hidden small chamber, almost integrated with the clock's mechanical structure. When opened, it turned out to be a miniature photographic device, designed to capture images through an almost imperceptible hole. "Truly an extraordinary invention," Laurent murmured, carefully studying this nearly 200-year-old surveillance device. Early military intelligence technology, perfectly combining art with espionage work. The talent of these master clockmakers far exceeds our imagination. This discovery sparked an inspiration in him. If the ancients could design such an ingenious surveillance system, modern technology could undoubtedly do better. An idea formed in his mind. He could use the clocks he was restoring to install similar surveillance devices in the auction house. He just wanted to confirm the doubts he had recently developed. Laurent was never a suspicious person, but certain clues had become difficult to ignore. Camille's behavior had subtly changed. Frequent overtime, mysterious phone calls, and reduced participation in their joint activities. What puzzled him more were some unreasonable judgments in the auction house's recent appraisals. Some obvious replicas were authenticated as genuine, and these auction items often disappeared from public view shortly after being auctioned. Laurent didn't rashly accuse or question. As a precision clock restorer, he was accustomed to patience and methodology. He carefully considered how to collect evidence, ensuring everything was completely legal and irrefutable. When dealing with a damaged antique pocket watch, what's most important, he often told his apprentices, it's to clearly identify the exact location and extent of the damage. With an accurate diagnosis, restoration can begin. Now, he needed to make the same diagnosis for his broken marriage. Laurent first consulted a legal advisor to ensure his plan wouldn't cross any boundaries. After confirming there were no issues, he began installing micro cameras in several clocks entrusted to him for restoration. These devices were ingeniously hidden in mechanisms only he knew about, without affecting the clock's normal operation or appearance. These are items placed in public places, filming public spaces, completely within legal regulations, lawyer Gabriel confirmed to him. If they capture illegal behavior, this evidence is fully valid in any court. The lights in Laurent's workshop often stayed on late into the night. He needed to ensure these hidden devices wouldn't be discovered during routine inspections. At the same time, they had to clearly record everything happening around them. Every screw, every connection, he calibrated meticulously, as focused as if restoring a precious museum piece. These clocks were placed in the auction house's exhibition hall, meeting rooms, and corridors near Camille's office. All were in public or semi-public areas, not involving any private spaces, ensuring complete legality. For the next 4 weeks, Laurent continued his daily work, appearing as usual. Each week, he would return to the auction house on the pretext of needing routine maintenance to check these clocks. He took this opportunity to replace the memory cards during these visits. In the 5th week, he returned to the auction house to retrieve all the clocks, claiming they needed final adjustments. In his workshop, Laurent closed the door, drew the curtains, removed all memory cards, and began systematically reviewing the collected footage. He organized the videos meticulously, like handling delicate clock parts, with time and place clearly annotated. Most content was mundane: visitors, staff's daily work, auction preparations. Until he saw the footage from the corridor outside Camille's office. Raoul and Camille came out of the office, looked around to ensure no one was nearby. Then Raoul pulled her into a deep kiss. What shocked Laurent even more was the conversation that followed. Is the transaction complete? Raoul asked in a low voice. Yes. The German buyer has already paid the deposit. The original will be delivered through our special channels, Camille answered. Her tone conveyed both excitement and nervousness. And my replica? Raoul inquired. Perfect. No one on the authentication committee suspected anything. The auction catalog is already printed. It will close next week. Our commission will reach 6 figures, darling. Enough for us to enjoy a luxurious vacation in Monaco. Raoul kissed her neck with this triumphant declaration. Be careful, someone could pass by here at any moment. Camille pushed him away, but with a smile on her face. About those divorce papers. Don't worry, once you completely get rid of that deaf old man, we can be together openly. He has no idea how special you are, nor does he deserve you. Laurent's world collapsed at that moment. 25 years of marriage, a partnership built on what he thought were shared values, turned out to be so false. He mechanically turned off the video and sat in darkness for a long time. His chest felt as if pressed by a heavy clock weight, but his mind remained exceptionally clear. So everything was a lie, he whispered to the empty room. When did it start? Was it in recent years? Or was it all just an illusion from the beginning? In the following weeks, Laurent didn't raise any alarms. He continued collecting evidence, expanding his surveillance range, installing devices in more clocks entrusted for restoration. He systematically recorded Camille and Raoul's multiple meetings and their detailed discussions about art forgery and substitution plans. Through these recordings, he also discovered that Camille had secretly transferred large sums of money to overseas accounts. She was preparing to leave at some point with her ill-gotten gains. One weekend, when Camille was out attending an auction house event, Laurent searched through her personal files at home. In a hidden safe, she didn't know Laurent had discovered the password long ago. He found even more shocking evidence. He discovered a set of fake passports, evidently prepared for escape. documents for multiple overseas bank accounts. And most heartbreaking, a draft of divorce papers already prepared, calculating how to obtain the maximum share of property in the divorce. What pained Laurent most wasn't the breakdown of the marriage, but Camille's betrayal of their shared beliefs, authenticity, and integrity. She hadn't just betrayed his trust as a husband, but also her professional ethics as an art guardian. Each substituted artwork was a desecration of history and culture, a deception of people who trusted her professional judgment. This isn't just a personal betrayal, it's a public crime, Laurent told himself, his heart gradually shifting from sadness to determination. He didn't expose her immediately, but began carefully planning. He first arranged a secret meeting with lawyer Moreau, bringing backups of all the evidence. "Does this evidence hold up legally?" Laurent asked. Lawyer Moreau nodded gravely. "Completely legal. Your recording devices were installed in items you legally own, placed in public areas. They don't violate any privacy laws. And you recorded criminal activity, which is valid evidence in any court." Laurent next organized his finances, transferring his assets to secure accounts to protect against possible plundering by Camille. He contacted an old friend in the International Art Crime Investigation Department, providing clues discreetly. He wasn't yet ready to reveal the complete evidence. Meanwhile, he began secretly preparing a detailed report, documenting information and evidence related to all the substituted artworks. To ensure everything was foolproof, Laurent also consulted a former forensic photographer. He wanted to learn how to best preserve and present visual evidence. "I need to make the evidence irrefutable," he told the photographer. "This is about justice and also concerns those collectors and institutions who were deceived." Then, he waited for the perfect moment. 2 months later, just 6 weeks after he had obtained solid evidence, Camille proposed having dinner together for their wedding anniversary. Laurent found this ironic, but also saw it as an opportunity. She chose Le Floris, Geneva's most famous lakeside restaurant, frequented by art world figures and social elites. "I've booked the best table," she told Laurent, her eyes sparkling with what Laurent could now identify as fake affection. "We should properly celebrate this special day." Laurent calmly agreed and made special arrangements with the restaurant manager beforehand. He prepared key evidence on microfilm in an envelope, ready to reveal the truth at the appropriate moment. "I need to play a short video during the meal," he told the manager. "It's a special surprise for my wife." The restaurant manager gladly agreed, not noticing the resolution in Laurent's eyes. Now, sitting at their anniversary dinner table, watching his wife and her lover smugly showing off, Laurent felt a strange calmness. 25 years of feelings had transformed into a persistent pursuit of justice. He watched the waiter carrying his envelope toward the back of the restaurant, preparing to execute his plan. Camille raised her glass, smiling coldly. "To our past, and to my wonderful future," Raoul arrogantly added. "And to those who can't keep up with the times." He meaningfully glanced at Laurent's hearing aid with this remark. At that moment, the restaurant lights dimmed. A projector lit up, and a clear image appeared on the wall, Camille and Raoul in the auction house's vault. They were carefully removing a famous painting from its frame and replacing it with Raoul's replica. The scene changed, showing them counting money in the office. Then another scene showed them discreetly delivering the original work to a nervous buyer at the auction house's back door. Finally, a scene of them embracing intimately, celebrating another perfect transaction. The entire restaurant fell into shocked silence. Camille's face went from smugness to deadly pale, while Raoul sat frozen in his seat, mouth agape. "I think both our marriage and your career end today, Camille," Laurent said calmly as he stood up. "Interpol agents are outside, very interested in your special channels and those disappeared originals." He turned to Raoul. "As for you, I believe those gambling debts in Monaco and Macau will soon catch up with you. Without Camille's protection and money, you'll have nothing." Laurent straightened his tie, looking around. Several auction house board members and art world figures were seated in the restaurant, all witnessing everything. "Good evening, everyone. I apologize for disrupting your meal." With that, Laurent walked out of the restaurant, where 2 impeccably dressed agents approached, nodding in acknowledgement. Inside the restaurant, chaos ensued. Camille tried to explain that everything was a misunderstanding, but the projection continued, showing more evidence. Raoul had already quietly stood up, preparing to flee, but was stopped by the waiters. Laurent walked along the shores of Lake Geneva, the night breeze caressing his face. 25 years of marriage ending this way, sad, yet also liberating. He knew difficult legal procedures and media storms would follow, but at that moment, he felt a freedom he hadn't experienced in years. The clock restorer's profession had taught him an important lesson. Some damage cannot be repaired. This is especially true when core parts have completely deviated from their original function. Once trust is broken, it's like the mainspring of a precision timepiece that has snapped. It can never return to its original state. Laurent's public revelation caused an earthquake in Geneva's art world. The Geneva Tribune and international media reported extensively on the scandal. Headlines like "Auction House Scandal," "Director Implicated in Art Forgery and Corruption" filled the pages. Others read, "25-year marriage ends due to art fraud," and "Times Witness. Master clockmaker reveals wife's double betrayal." For Laurent, the following days were exceptionally busy. He moved out of their shared residence the night of the incident, checking into a hotel in the city center. The next morning, he contacted a lawyer to initiate divorce proceedings. He clearly stated he wanted to file for divorce on grounds of irretrievable breakdown of marriage and spouse's serious misconduct. He rejected any attempts at mediation or reconciliation from the start. Camille quickly realized the gravity of the situation. She first tried constantly contacting Laurent by phone, and when calls were blocked, attempted to send messages through mutual friends. She proposed favorable property division conditions, claiming willingness to waive any claim rights to the workshop. She even hinted she would publicly apologize in exchange for him withdrawing some charges. Please tell her some betrayals cannot be remedied, nor do they need to be, Laurent told his friend Etienne, who came to intercede. His tone was cold and determined. Tell her I neither need her money nor her fake apologies. The divorce lawyer will contact her. The rest will be settled by law. Etienne shifted uncomfortably. She seems genuinely sorry, Laurent. She's been crying. Says she made a terrible mistake. Sorry for being caught, or sorry for what she did? Laurent countered. He continued adjusting the escapement of an antique pocket watch as he spoke. If I hadn't discovered it, she would have unhesitatingly left me, taken her illegal gains, and lived luxuriously with that con man. I found prepared divorce papers in her safe, Etienne. She even planned how to get more of my property in the divorce. But people make mistakes. Etienne attempted. Laurent put down his tools, looking directly at Etienne. Etienne, there's a fundamental difference between making a mistake and deliberate betrayal. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Saying something hurtful in a moment of impulse is a mistake. But systematically planning for months to deceive and betray, while committing crimes worthy of imprisonment, that's not a mistake. He walked to the other side of his workbench, pulling out a thick folder. Here are records of 27 artworks that she and Raoul substituted. 27 invaluable cultural heritage pieces replaced with fakes, then sold to collectors and institutions that trusted her professional judgment. She didn't just betray me. She also betrayed principles she once upheld and her professional ethics. She made countless collectors by forgeries, destroyed the auction house's credibility and the integrity foundation of the entire art market. Laurent heavily dropped the folder back on the table. So no, Etienne, I don't accept her apologies, nor do I consider any form of reconciliation. Some things, once done, cannot be undone. Etienne wanted to say more, but Laurent had already put on his magnifying glass, refocusing on his work. He clearly indicated the conversation was over. Laurent knew Etienne and other friends might not fully understand his resolution. But what he couldn't forgive wasn't just personal betrayal, but the desecration of shared values. In his view, Camille's actions had destroyed the foundation of their relationship, like sand in a clock's mechanism, causing irreversible damage. In the following weeks, Camille continuously tried various ways to contact Laurent. She sent apology letters and expensive gifts, all returned unopened. She tried to accidentally meet him at cafes he frequented, only to find he had changed his daily habits. When she tried waiting outside Laurent's workshop for the third time, a police officer politely but firmly informed her of the consequences. Laurent had applied for a temporary restraining order, prohibiting her from approaching his residence and workplace. Lauren's friend Marcel noticed that despite experiencing all this, Lauren's focus and precision at work hadn't diminished at all. Only during rest moments would those eyes that could always detect the minutest flaws occasionally lose focus. They would gaze into the distance, revealing a cold, hard determination. Interpol launched a full investigation into the auction house. A search warrant allowed them to examine records of all major auctions from the past 3 years. The investigation found that at least 27 high-value artworks and antiques had been substituted under Camille's direction. The originals flowed into private collections or overseas markets through underground channels. Meanwhile, forgeries were sold at exorbitant prices with the auction house's official certification. Raoul managed to briefly escape after the restaurant incident, but his photo and identity information were already published internationally. Through investigating him, police discovered he was actually a long-active art forger. He had used multiple false identities to operate in Europe, Asia, and North America. He had connections with several organized crime groups, participating not only in art forgery, but also in money laundering and gambling activities. 3 weeks later, Raoul was arrested while trying to leave Monaco on a private yacht. Ironically, it was gambling debt that led a criminal lender to provide information to the police. When arrested, he carried forged passports and jewelry worth nearly €1 million. These were believed to be part of his and Camille's criminal proceeds. Camille's fate deteriorated equally rapidly. The auction house's board of directors held an emergency meeting the night of the incident. They unanimously decided to immediately remove her from office and cooperate with the investigation. Her emails, communication records, and bank accounts were examined. These revealed complete details of her conspiracy with Raoul and how she used her authority to cover up forgery activities. What shocked Camille most was the rapid reaction of her social circle. Those who once flattered her disappeared overnight. Invitations to high-end parties evaporated. Even her closest inner-circle friends publicly distanced themselves, fearing association. Her social media accounts received so many negative comments that she was forced to close all platforms. Laurent, meanwhile, unexpectedly found himself a media focus and public hero. His action of exposing art fraud was praised as a heroic deed in defense of cultural heritage. Several museums and collection institutions asked him to help authenticate possibly substituted items. More surprisingly, he received an invitation from the Swiss Department of Culture, acknowledging his contribution to protecting national cultural heritage. "These accolades make me uncomfortable," Laurent told his assistant Marcel. "I only did what any person respecting truth would do." Marcel shook his head. "Boss, you exposed one of the biggest art fraud cases in Europe in recent years. You not only saved your marriage's dignity, but also protected the interests of countless collectors and institutions." "Perhaps," Laurent smiled slightly. "But now I just want to return to tranquility, focus on my work." However, tranquility didn't arrive immediately. At the divorce hearing, Camille's lawyers tried to shift all blame to Raoul, claiming she was manipulated and coerced. They questioned Lauren's evidence collection methods, claiming those hidden cameras violated privacy. Judge Beaufort, after carefully examining all evidence, dismissed Camille's side's objections. According to records, these recording devices were installed inside clocks that the plaintiff legally owned and publicly displayed. They were placed in public or semi-public areas, without violating any legally protected privacy. On the contrary, they recorded evidence of systematic criminal activity. The divorce concluded with Lauren's complete victory. Due to Camille's criminal conduct and betrayal of the marriage, the court ruled she had no right to any division of common property. She was also denied any form of alimony. In fact, she faced enormous fines and possible imprisonment, losing almost all properties. The criminal case process was lengthier. Raoul faced multiple serious charges, including fraud, forgery, money laundering, and participation in organized crime activities. Given the conclusive evidence and his recidivist status, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Camille, as an accomplice, received a lighter but still severe punishment. She got 5 years imprisonment, 3 years probation, plus huge fines and 500 hours of community service. More devastating was the court's additional sentence: lifetime prohibition from working in any art trading, auction, an authentication-related industry. Her once proud professional career completely ended. 6 months after the sentencing, Laurent received a letter from prison. Camille requested to see him once, claiming she wanted to explain and provide more information about Raoul's criminal network. Laurent initially planned to refuse directly, but the lawyer suggested this might help recover more stolen artworks. He reluctantly agreed to this meeting, making it clear this wasn't for reconciliation, but to fulfill responsibility toward the artworks. In the prison visiting room, Camille had been waiting. Without her carefully styled hair and expensive makeup, she looked disheveled. Laurent noticed she still tried to maintain an elegant posture, as if this were some high-level social event rather than a prison visiting room. Her eyes brightened seeing Laurent, quickly adopting a penitent expression. "Thank you for coming, Laurent," she said softly, her voice carrying a carefully calculated vulnerability. Laurent merely nodded coldly, his expression hard as stone. "What new information do you have about Raoul's criminal network?" Camille's eyes flashed disappointment, evidently hoping for more casual conversation. "I do have some information, but first, I want you to know how sorry I am." "I have no interest in your regret, Camille," Laurent interrupted. "If you have no substantial information about the artworks, this meeting can end." Camille's expression changed, the remorse on her face falling like a curtain, revealing calculation and manipulation underneath. "You really don't want to hear my explanation at all? 25 years of marriage, and just like that, no room for reconsideration. The 25 years of marriage were destroyed by you, not me," Laurent calmly responded. "What information do you have about Raoul's network?" Realizing she couldn't move Laurent, Camille adopted another strategy. "He has a warehouse in Madrid, storing at least 5 paintings stolen from the Louvre branch. I can provide the exact address, if you would consider writing me a support letter for lenient treatment." "You're using artworks for bargaining?" Laurent shook his head, feeling disgust. "Isn't that exactly what you and Raoul have been doing all along? Treating priceless cultural heritage as bargaining chips. It's the only chip I have left." Camille suddenly raised her voice. Her mask completely fell, revealing desperation and anger beneath. "You destroyed everything of mine. I rot here while you become a hero, respected by all." "I destroyed you?" Laurent asked incredulously. "It was your own greed and betrayal that destroyed you. It was you who chose to betray every person who trusted you. You betrayed the principles you once upheld. You're always so self-righteous, so morally perfect." Camille hissed. "Do you know how boring it's been living with you these past years? You and your clocks, your integrity and truth. The real world doesn't run according to your rules, Laurent." Laurent stood up, calm but determined. "This meeting is over. I will inform the authorities about the Madrid warehouse, but I won't write any support letter for you. Goodbye, Camille. You can't just leave like this." Camille struggled to stand, but guards immediately intervened. "I know more. About the auction house, about the board of directors. Some of them knew what I was doing." "Laurent." Laurent turned and left, Camille's voice behind him growing sharp and desperate. "You think you've won? You have nothing. Just your clocks and your pathetic self-righteousness." "At least I lived, Laurent. At least I experienced passion and adventure. You have nothing except those lifeless machines." Laurent walked out of the visiting room without looking back, his face showing no emotion. He only felt a certainty. He had made the right decision to completely cut ties with this woman. Her words and actions again proved this wasn't a momentary lapse, but a revelation of her core nature. Did she provide any useful information? Detective Rousseau, waiting outside, asked. "There's a warehouse in Madrid that possibly contains artwork stolen from the Louvre branch," Laurent answered concisely. "But I recommend cross-verification. She's not a reliable source." "Understood. Thank you for coming to see her. I know this has been difficult for you." "There won't be a next time," Laurent said firmly. "No matter what new reason she proposes, I won't see her again. Some people and things are best handled by completely cutting them off." Laurent walked out of the prison gates, taking a deep breath of fresh air. Camille's accusation echoed in his mind. "You have nothing." Ironically, it was through losing that marriage built on lies that he truly found himself. He didn't need forgiveness to achieve peace, nor did he need her understanding or approval. Truth and integrity were reward enough. A year and a half later, Laurent organized a special exhibition at the Geneva History Museum. times truth. Hidden mechanisms in antique clocks. This exhibition stemmed from his method of exposing the art forgery case, but had a broader scope. It showcased various clocks with secret mechanisms from the 18th century to the early 20th century. The exhibition centered on that Napoleon-era clock with the secret photographic device, along with several other historical timepieces with hidden functions. The exhibition also included a special section, artworks recovered through Lawrence's help. These artworks had small labels detailing how they were stolen, how they were recovered, and Lawrence's contribution to the process. This section attracted wide attention from the global art world, becoming an important educational tool warning against art fraud. On the opening day, the Swiss Minister of Culture personally presented him with the Special Contribution to Cultural Heritage Protection Medal. It acknowledged his outstanding contribution to preserving the authenticity of cultural heritage. Mr. Laurent is not only an outstanding restorer, but also a defender of authenticity and integrity, the minister said in his citation. In an era increasingly concerned with appearances and market value, he reminds us that true value lies not in an item's selling price. Rather, it's in its authenticity and historical significance. Without integrity, cultural heritage loses its soul. Interpol representatives also expressed gratitude to Laurent. They revealed that with his help, they had recovered over 65% of the stolen artworks and dismantled 3 international art forgery gangs. After the ceremony, Laurent stood alone in the center of the exhibition hall, looking around. Visitors were fascinated by the complex mechanisms and exquisite craftsmanship of these fine timepieces. They were completely unaware of how one of them had thoroughly changed the trajectory of his life. His former colleague and friend Philippe approached, softly saying, "Heard Raoul got into more trouble in prison. Tried to bribe guards, got transferred to a high-security facility. Seems some people never learn." Laurent merely nodded, with no interest in Raoul's fate. And Philippe hesitated a moment. "Camille has been granted reduced sentencing for good behavior, transferred to community service. She's working at a small archive in the St. Bernard region, organizing antique documentation. You know, back to basic work. That's her business," Laurent replied calmly, his face showing no emotion. "I hope she follows the rules this time." Philippe seemed relieved, evidently concerned the topic might touch Laurent. "You know, the auction house's new director mentions you frequently. He says without the scandal you exposed, those issues might never have been discovered and corrected. They now implement strict authentication processes, requiring 3 independent experts to verify each important piece." Laurent nodded. "That's the right direction. Art and history's authenticity shouldn't be overshadowed by market value." At the reception, a young reporter approached Laurent, asking curiously, "Mr. Laurent, facing the trauma of your ex-wife's betrayal, how do you maintain such focus and serenity? People are curious about your recovery process." Laurent thought for a moment. "There's no such thing as a recovery process. Some things, once they happen, permanently change your life's trajectory. The key isn't returning to the past, but deciding how to move forward. I choose to focus on what's real and valuable, nothing more." The reporter wanted to ask more, but Laurent politely moved away. Over the years, many people had tried to romanticize or simplify his story into a narrative of revenge or redemption, but he refused to cooperate. The truth was always more complex. After the exhibition, Laurent walked alone along Lake Geneva's shore. At dusk, the lake's surface shimmered with reflections, and in the distance, the Alps were bathed in golden light from the setting sun. Everything that had happened over the past 2 years flashed through his mind like movie scenes. He no longer felt pain or anger over the betrayal, but he would also never forgive or forget. A few months earlier, a mutual friend told him that Camille had hinted at wanting to start over after serving her sentence. She had suggested perhaps contacting Laurent again. Laurent immediately made it clear he would not accept any form of contact and asked the friend to convey this message. "It's not because of hatred," he explained, "but because there's no possibility between us anymore. Once trust is completely broken, it's like crystal. It can never return to its original state." His workshop had now expanded, with 5 young apprentices to whom he passed on his knowledge and love for authenticity. 2 of them, from disadvantaged backgrounds, were supported through his newly established True Art Foundation. This foundation not only supported the training of young craftsmen, but also was dedicated to combating art forgery. It worked toward protecting the authenticity of cultural heritage. Laurent received invitations from museums and private collectors worldwide. He became the preferred expert for authenticating and restoring rare timepieces. His name had become synonymous with integrity and exceptional craftsmanship. Back in his workshop, Laurent sat at the old restoration table his father once used. Under the light, he was restoring a rare 18th-century Swiss astronomical clock, reportedly once belonging to Voltaire. He removed his hearing aid, enjoying a moment of quiet, his fingers skillfully adjusting the complex escapement mechanism. Time will ultimately reveal truth, he often told his apprentices. Just like in clocks, what's most important in life isn't external decoration or social evaluation. It's the authenticity and completeness of internal mechanisms. Once the core is corrupted, no matter how beautiful the exterior, it's meaningless. In each precise adjustment, in each successful restoration, Laurent found a deep-level satisfaction. Clock restoration had taught him some damage can be repaired, while others can never be bridged. This is especially true when core components are destroyed. Betrayal is like injecting corrosive agents into precision instruments, causing irreversible damage. No apology or compensation can restore trust once destroyed. The only path is forward, with persistence in truth and guarding of core values. Outside, the clock tower struck 9, the long chimes resonating in the twilight. Laurent looked up toward the window. Night had already enveloped Geneva. He knew that in life's precision instrument, each choice has its consequences, each betrayal its price. And time is forever the most just and merciless judge. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. Looking forward to seeing you in our next story.